how much do you control? That's not a question you hear very often, is it? You can likely control your motor functions, such as moving your hands and wiggling your feet. But what about the weather? Or even your own heart? Likely not. But the real question we should be asking is, how hard is it to control a person? I'd argue that it's not difficult at all. That getting people to do, say, and even think what you want them to is a lot more plausible than telling the clouds to clear. So why is it so easy to control people? Why do cults work so well? This essay is nowhere near as serious as this introduction made it out to be. The origin of cults, or more accurately, the word itself, which used to be cultus, meant nothing more than the devout worship of a godlike figure. Thus, even established religions, such as Christianity, were regarded as cults in the past. However, the word picked up a rather mischievous connotation over the years, which doesn't inherently mean that cults are bad, and that people in them are to be compared to headless chickens. Instead, that the collective action determines whether the cult is bad or not. Now, I'll just assume that you, yes, you specifically, aren't some reincarnation of Machiavelli, and that you'll put on your big boy pants and never actually try starting a cult yourself. But I do find it important that we at least understand how they form and operate, so that we don't end up drinking laced Kool-Aid ourselves. You must open your heart and believe is something you'd hear a shirtless, dubiously smelling man shouting in the middle of the street. And he's not wrong. Cults are all fundamentally grounded in belief. A cult has to have a cause, a reason for existing, so to say, even if that reason is to get rich. A veneer, however thin it might be, must be cast over whatever the underlying intention is. But before you even attempt to criticize the validity or effectiveness of belief, think about how convenient money is. It's really just colored fucking paper we all collectively believe has value. Cults have simple narratives that really pull at the heartstrings. Humans yearn for meaning. They want their actions to be impactful and their existence to mean something in the grand scheme. Making their search for meaning easier by promising all of the answers to life's questions. You know, what comes after death? What's the purpose of those plastic pizza savers that look like tiny tables? It really makes the whole thing more believable. Meaning is the single strongest human need, said Mr. Viktor Frankl once, and he's not wrong. You could fill your heart knowing that cleaning the sewers 12 hours a day pays for your children's future. On the contrary, having no real reason to live ends up crippling the person, and it's evident when the rates of self-harm for purposeless young adults skyrockets. And that's exactly the paradox of cults. They thrive because they give people something bigger than themselves. In other words, they promise they're never gonna give you up. Please don't click off. But that's great for cults. We're all gullible little fools that get infatuated in fictional stories. We might scoff at the tale of a man doing a futile task all his life, but shrouded in myth, said tale becomes a symbol, a representation for the absurdity of life. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, or whatever that Camus guy said.
What do you call him?
Belief comes in many different forms. It doesn't have to be a floating man in the sky, or green creatures with antennas and flying saucers you believe in. But any of these could trick us. Because at the end of the day, it's not the cause that draws us in, it's the vicious people behind it. We seem to be drawn toward certain people. It's as if they permeate a magnetic field around them. They have what you would refer to as charisma, or the more modern iteration of the word that we will likely still use in our 80s.
Let me tell you something, kiddo. I had Riz back in my day.
Which in short, makes everything they say feel more credible and believable. They then create symbols and announce group activities resembling a kind of worship that leads to bondage and later such a strong knitted belief which is no longer to be severed. It also conveniently makes people who are in it feel special by means of symbolism that they can recognize even outside of the cult, thus strengthening the bond whenever they see other members outside of the cult. And don't undermine the effects of a strong community, the ability to be connected to a lot of people.
Hey,
Dunbar's number is a suggested cognitive limit of approximately... What is this word salad? It says that a person can only keep about 150 stable relationships at once. So a cult overrides it all and makes the people in it appear to be the only real people you know. Symbols are kinda wonky, dude, since any group activity could be viewed as some sort of cult. Let me paint a fun scenario. Let's say aliens suddenly decide to make first contact. And so it happens, they stumble in during a super important football match. What is the first thing they're going to see? A bunch of colorful monkeys yelling at them from all around, while a select few kick a sphere around? The next thing they know, some other entity with black and white striped fur starts screeching at them in perfect sine-formed pitch while waving a red card around. And what's that? That red one's making some weird noise with his mouth. Is that? But before we go ridicule such foul behavior, cults aren't the only groups that do this. The largest and most well-recognized companies in the world employ such dirty tricks through their marketing. Think Nike, or for the sake of this example, we'll take the electronic device company known as Pear. Their products are all marked by their signature half-eaten pear that we recognize from a mile away. They even have their own iteration of the language, with the iPair and iHeadphones, a clear competitor and enemy that further bonds the customers to the product. Customers, to which I'll refer to as members, to keep the analogy congruent, wait outside of stores for days at a time. They have online debates and genuinely view the product as being part of their identity. But, as I've mentioned prior, this isn't bad per se. It's just a part of building a community. The real problem arises when people are manipulated into joining under some false promise. Forcing a person's hand by means of commands and actions that cause an individual's emotions to fluctuate is in essence manipulation, and it shouldn't be mistaken for hypnosis or mind control. Both of these methods could lead to the same desired outcome. Ducks, for example, they quack and thwaff and jibber jabber, jibber jabber. Are you still with me? Breathe manually for a second. Oh, you've been breathing unconsciously this entire time. Strange. It's almost as if the brain gets used to it after a prolonged period of time, without even noticing it. If some hipster-looking fellow came up to you and told you to obey, you'd probably kindly advise the man to go fuck himself. No, the whole process of manipulation is a little more complex than that. It resembles the roots of a tree that gradually spread out, solidifying the tree's structure, allowing the flourishing leaves to seduce even more people. But as with any great tree, it must first be planted in fertile soil. For cults, such soil is... What the fuck? Vulnerable people, once going through a tough time in their lives, when they're a lot more susceptible to friendliness. They desire belonging and to be understood. Conveniently, such groups grant exactly that alongside an explanation for their problems. Once they establish social ties to the, I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it, victim, they start really mauling at the person's psyche. It begins with just caring about the person and escalates into pure love bombing. Oh, what's love bombing, you ask? It's a continuous shower of intense affection over time that over time gets withheld or enforced even more to build a strong appetite for approval. Ouch. But before they start to command the person around, they condition him first, so he doesn't repulse right off the bat. Think of cooking live frogs. If you just turn up the heat, the frogs will jump out of the pot. But if you slowly turn up the heat, letting them simmer and get used to the heat, at some point they will no longer be able to hop out. One of these conditioning tactics is making the people feel guilty and afraid, as though all of their problems stem from their insufficient belief, and any critical thought gets ridiculed and suppressed. Now that they're really serenaded their ideals into the person, they solidify it with conformity, an extreme form of obedience. There were numerous experiments done on this. For example, the ASP conformity experiment showed that about 3/4 of people chose the obviously wrong answer because everyone around them did.
Where's my leg?
And don't even give me that. Oh, I could never fall for something so dumb. I'm independent and smart. People who get recruited aren't stupid. A cult works because it manages to disguise itself well. No cult is gonna tell you it's a cult up front. The hell? Thus, this conformity obedience thingamajiggy gets reinforced through rituals, which induce an artificial feeling of OCD. Like, if you don't jump exactly 3 times while spinning in a circle, the sun will explode, or something. Complete isolation from the outside world and ideas that would poison the person's beliefs. And a childlike dependency. Yada yada yada. It's really f***ed up. They go as far as disguising a mental breakdown or existential crisis that they caused as some sort of awakening. They start demanding things, making up stories which you can no longer rationalize because your mind's already been tampered with. Come on, don't look at me like that. You know this topic is touchy. I can't help but get a little agitated. Alright, I might have went overboard there, but you have to understand. You're right. Yes, I hear you. Oh, what would I do without you, kitty cat? And if you made it this far, congratulations. You've been indoctrinated into the cult of Fendelhausians. Our first ritual begins now. Stand up, spin around 3 times, and pretend you understood all of this. If you don't, the sun will explode. Good voiceover is super duper important. Yeah. Yeah. Kitty cat.